My name is Donald Pell, and I'm living in Mexico City. I'm retired, and I've been living here some time, but that is unimportant. Many years ago, I lived in New York City. I lived in New York City for about 12 years. I had a family there. Well, it so happened that I lost my job, and one thing that happened. I won't go into details about that because that's not important. What is important that I needed to make a living. And to make a living, I decided that I would sell merchandise on the streets of New York. The merchandises I chose were leather belts, very common item a lot of people need. And luckily I found a source, I found a manufacturer, a large manufacturer in the village that would sell me the belts for the price he was selling them to Macy's, okay? So it was $1, okay? He was selling it to Macy's for $1, and Macy's was getting $11, $12, $15 for the belts. So I decided to sell these belts in front of the Empire State Building. If you know New York, the Empire State Building is just a stone's throw from Macy's. Well, I didn't do it just to do Macy's, but I knew this would be a place of high traffic. And I wasn't the only vendor in that area, okay? So I would sell these products to the people as they passed by. And it's not legal. I had a license, but the license is not good. On the streets of New York, the licenses are good in designated areas of the city, which is sort of very removed from the population. Well, it didn't make any sense to do that. I wanted to make money. So I sold my belts there in front of the Empire State Building, knowing it was illegal. And in order to avoid any conflict with the police, I stationed my girlfriend to stand up on a light post stand and watch the tops of people's heads as they approached. Because, you could see a policeman wearing his hat and bobbing in among the crowd, and believe me, there's a lot of people that go past that spot. And so when she spotted the policeman, then she would notify me, and I would wrap everything up quickly and dash inside of Nedick's, which was right there across from the Empire State Building. That's where I was. And till the policeman passed, and then I'm going to go back out and go do my business. Well, that worked fine. I worked just fine for a while, except that the police department would use a plainclothesman. Consequently, I could not spot him. He just like everybody else in the crowd. And so there I am selling my stuff, and he would come up to me and says, "Aha, I caught you. You got to wrap it up today, You can't do it here. You got to move on." And I would say, "Right, I'm sorry," and I'd wrap up my stuff and I would go. No problem. And this would happen repeatedly, meaning that the officer in uniform I would always avoid, but I would always get caught by the same plainclothesman. And he didn't hassle me, he didn't arrest me, he didn't confiscate my material, which he could have done. And we respected each other. He knew I was just trying to make a living. He knew I was breaking the law. And the simple thing is I just could fold up for the day and go away. And a lot of times I just fold up and go down to Wall Street and sell in Wall Street. Or I go up to Times Square and sell in Times Square. It's not like it's a big deal. It's not a big deal. I'm remarking about this because of the guy who was arrested and that died in New York who was a vendor on the street, and the policeman simply told him to move on. And if he did the things like I did, he would still be alive. You don't challenge the police. The New York police will enforce the law, thank God. But they also will respect you. They're not out to harm you or to do you harm. They are only enforcing the law, and if you respect the policeman, you got no problem. I had no problem. And so I did that for years, and I made a lot of money on the streets of New York that way. You do not resist a policeman because he's bound to enforce the law. And I do not see in that video of the black guy, it had nothing to do with his skin color. Like, I'm white, okay? It's nothing to do with skin color. It had to do with obedience to the law. You're breaking the law, and now you have been caught, and it's time for you to acknowledge you're breaking the law and just move on. It's very simple. No harm is going to come to you. It never came to me in the years that I was on the streets of New York. I have to respect the policemen for their restraint and for their understanding of my situation. They knew I was only trying to make a living, and this is one way of doing it. And they are enforcing the law. Actually, they often enforce the law at the request of Macy's. They plant people in the Empire State Building, that's near Macy's, to watch out for vendors like me. And they call the police, and the police come down, and they enforce the law. Okay? And everybody's happy. There's no big problem. And I think in this man's case that the store reported him, and the policeman wasn't really looking out for him. He might have been, but he reported, and the police have to respond. And so you go and ask the person to leave. You ask the person to leave. But if they resist arrest, a policeman can do nothing but to enforce the law. He has to finally be the conqueror. He has to finally be the winner. You cannot be the winner. What do you tell a policeman? I'm not going to do it. What the hell are you? You know? He can't let that happen. He has to enforce the law, and which is what he did. I'm sorry that he had to be that rough with the man. I'm sorry that he died as a result of that. I do not think it was the intent of the policeman to do any harm. It would have been a lot better if the guy said, okay, and then go someplace else, or come back in a few minutes. It's not that big a deal, I know. And so I do not have any sympathy for all the demonstrators. I think they're wrong. I think they should examine what really happened. This happened with me, and I had no problem. No one wrestled me to the ground. It's not because of my skin color. I'm sure at one time I was arrested when the police had a lot of vendors on the street, and they arrested me and took my stuff, which is what they can do. And I was supposed to appear in court, charged with a misdemeanor. It might have been a fine, I don't know, because I essentially did not go to the court, okay? I just continued doing what I was doing. So it's foolish for people to resist the law in such a way. The same thing with Brown. He should have just got up on the sidewalk, and that was the end of it. It's the people who challenge the police. You're going to lose. That's all there is to it. And if you're really so forceful, you're going to lose your life, because the police have a right to defend themselves if necessary. So I'm just making this recording to make it known that I'm one person who was a vendor on the street in New York, who had no problem. I earned a good living that way. I was never hassled by the police to the extent that was in the videos of Brown and this other fellow, I don't know his name, in New York. And I'm just making it as my comment on what's happening. Thank you for listening. I hope this helped clarify some of the problems and some of the misunderstanding. America is a great country. And the system, the legal system in the United States, no, not perfect, is better than most in most countries. Okay? So God bless America, and I hope this helped you to understand better what the legal system is in New York City.